I'm Elena, 48, and my husband handed me divorce papers as an anniversary gift in front of everyone we knew, expecting me to crumble. Before I tell you how I turned his victory lap into a prison sentence, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far our community reaches. The air inside the gilded cage was always too cold. It was one of those Chicago restaurants where the air conditioning was set to a temperature that practically demanded you wear a fur coat just to survive the appetizers. Or maybe, looking back, it was just the people sitting at my table. I adjusted the strap of my black dress, smoothing out a wrinkle that didn't exist. Across from me sat Marcus. My husband of 20 years. He looked immaculate, I'll give him that. He was wearing a custom-tailored navy suit, the kind that cost more than my father's car used to cost. His hair was gelled back, peppered with just enough gray to make him look distinguished, like a CEO from a magazine cover. He was smiling, that wide, charming smile that used to make my knees weak 2 decades ago. Now, it just looked like a shark baring its teeth before a bite. To his right sat Chloe. Just looking at her made my stomach turn over, but I forced myself to take a sip of sparkling water. Chloe was 26. She was wearing a red dress that was, frankly, inappropriate for a formal anniversary dinner, cut low enough to make the waiter blush every time he refilled her water. But it wasn't the dress that bothered me. It was who she was. I had known Chloe since she was a teenager. I had paid off her student loans. I had gotten her the job at Marcus's company as his executive assistant. I had treated her like the daughter I never had, or at least the little sister I always wanted. And now, her knee was pressing against my husband's leg under the table. She thought I couldn't see it. She thought the tablecloth hid their dirty little secret. But I saw the way the fabric of his trousers moved. I saw the way her eyes darted to him, full of a secret, giddy excitement. "Elena, you're not eating," Marcus said, his voice booming. He wanted everyone to hear. He wanted to play the concerned husband one last time. "I'm saving room for dessert, Marcus," I said. My voice was steady. Steadier than I felt. Around us, the table was filled with Marcus's business associates. There was heavyset Bob from construction, who never looked me in the eye. There was slippery lawyer Stan, who always called me sweetheart in a tone that suggested I had the IQ of a golden retriever. They were all grinning, a little too wide, a little too drunk on the expensive Cabernet Marcus had ordered. They knew. Everyone at this table knew except, supposedly, me. Marcus tapped his spoon against his wine glass. Clink, clink, clink. The sound cut through the murmurs of the restaurant. Heads turned. This was the Gilded Cage, a place for the Chicago elite to see and be seen. When Marcus stood up, he commanded the room. He loved this. He loved the attention. He loved being the sun that everyone else revolved around. "Friends, colleagues," Marcus began, his chest puffing out. He rested a hand on my shoulder. His grip was firm, almost painful. "Thank you for being here tonight. 20 years. Can you believe it? 2 decades with this wonderful woman, Elena." He looked down at me. His eyes were cold, dead things. There was no love there. There hadn't been for a long time. Just calculation. "Elena has been a constant," he continued, and I heard a few snickers from Stan's end of the table. "She supported me when I had nothing. She stood by me while I built sterling real estate into the empire it is today. But, you know, life is about growth. Life is about evolution." He paused for dramatic effect. Chloe took a sip of her wine, her eyes sparkling with malicious anticipation. "And tonight," Marcus said, reaching under his chair, "I wanted to give Elena a gift that truly represents where we are going. A gift that symbolizes our future." He pulled out a box. It was beautiful, I have to admit. Blue velvet. Rectangular. It looked like it could hold a diamond necklace. A strand of pearls. The entire table went silent. The waiter stopped moving. The couple at the next table leaned in, watching the rich husband spoil his lucky wife. "Go on, honey," Marcus said, sliding the box across the white tablecloth. "Open it." He was grinning. It wasn't a smile of affection. It was a smile of victory. It was the face of a man who thought he had already won the game and was just waiting for the opponent to realize they were dead. I looked at the box. I knew exactly what was inside. I didn't need X-ray vision. I had felt the shift in the air for weeks. I reached out. My hand didn't shake. I made sure of that. I unlatched the gold clasp. It made a soft click. I lifted the lid. There were no diamonds. No pearls. No jewelry. Inside, folded neatly into the velvet indentation, was a thick stack of papers. The header on the top page was bold and black, legible even in the dim mood lighting of the restaurant. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Divorce papers. A sound rippled through the table, a mix of gasps and choked-back laughter. Chloe didn't bother hiding it anymore. She let out a high-pitched giggle, covering her mouth with a manicured hand. "Surprise," Marcus said. He didn't shout it, but his voice carried. "It's the gift of freedom, Elena. For both of us." He sat back down, looking incredibly pleased with himself. He draped his arm over the back of Chloe's chair, effectively claiming her in public. "I think it's time we stopped pretending, don't you? Chloe and I, well, we deserve a fresh start. And frankly, you deserve someone more your speed. Maybe a librarian? Or a gardener?" Stan laughed loudly. "Good one, Marcus." "Just sign them, Elena," Marcus said, his tone shifting from mocking to dismissive. He snapped his fingers at a waiter. "Bring us another bottle of the 98. We have a real celebration to start." The humiliation hung in the air like thick smoke. He had brought me here, to the place where we celebrated our 10th anniversary, to discard me like an old coat in front of his sycophants. He expected tears. He expected a scene. He expected me to scream, to throw wine, to beg him to stay. He had scripted this entire moment to showcase his power and my pathetic irrelevance. I looked at the papers. Then I looked at Chloe. She smirked at me, a look that said, "I won, you lost, deal with it, old woman." I looked at Marcus. He was already turning away, talking to Bob about a zoning permit, assuming I was no longer a factor in his life. I felt a fire in my chest. But it wasn't the chaotic fire of rage. It was the cold, blue flame of absolute focus. I closed the velvet box with a sharp snap. The sound was loud enough to interrupt Marcus. He looked back at me, annoyed. "Don't be dramatic, Elena," he sighed. "Just take the papers and go. I've called you an Uber." "Thank you for the gift, Marcus," I said. My voice was calm. Conversational. Like we were discussing the weather. Marcus blinked. This wasn't in his script. "Excuse me?" I said thank you, I repeated. I reached down to my handbag, a sensible, sturdy leather bag that he always made fun of. "It's funny you brought gifts tonight. Because I have something for you, too." The table went quiet again. Curiosity is a powerful thing. "I didn't get you anything," Marcus sneered. "I'm not buying you a parting gift." "Oh, you don't have to pay for this," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. "You've already paid for it. Dearly." I pulled out a simple manila folder. It wasn't velvet. It wasn't fancy. But as I placed it on the table, moving his divorce papers aside to make room, I saw a flicker of something in Marcus's eyes. Confusion. Maybe a tiny drop of fear. "What is this?" he asked, staring at the folder. "Open it," I echoed his earlier command. But he didn't move. He just stared at me. He realized, perhaps for the first time in years, that the woman sitting across from him wasn't the wallpaper he thought she was. I leaned forward. The restaurant faded away. the laughing friends faded away. It was just me and him. You wanted a show, Marcus, I whispered. You wanted an audience. Well, you're about to get one. But it's not the one you invited. I rested my hand on the folder. Underneath my palm lay the end of his world. But to understand why I didn't cry, to understand why I was the one smiling while his life was about to shatter, we have to go back. We have to go back 6 months, to the moment I realized my marriage wasn't just dead, it was a crime scene. To understand the woman who sat in that restaurant without shedding a tear, you have to meet the woman I was 6 months ago. I was a ghost in my own house. That's the only way to describe it. We lived in a sprawling, 4-bedroom colonial in Lake Forest, one of the most affluent suburbs of Chicago. It was the kind of house that appeared in architectural magazines. Pristine lawns, high ceilings, marble countertops that were always cold to the touch. It was beautiful, and it was a prison. My day started at 5 a.m. Every single morning. I would wake up before the sun, careful not to wake Marcus, who would be snoring softly beside me, or, more often than not, sleeping in the guest room because he had a late night and didn't want to disturb me. I would go downstairs to the kitchen. It was my domain, but not in a powerful way. I was the operator of the machinery. I made his coffee, dark roast, French press, exactly 4 minutes of steeping. I ironed his shirts, even though we could easily afford a dry cleaning service. Marcus insisted he liked the way I did the collars better. It made me feel needed. It made me feel like I was contributing to his massive success. Behind every great man, he would say in the early years, kissing my forehead. Now, he didn't say anything. On a typical Tuesday, 6 months before the anniversary dinner, Marcus came down the stairs at 7:30 a.m. He was on his phone, typing furiously. "Morning," I said, placing a plate of eggs Benedict in front of him. I made the hollandaise sauce from scratch. He grunted, not looking up. He shoveled a forkful of eggs into his mouth while scrolling. "Do you have that meeting with the investors today?" I asked, trying to start a conversation. "The one about the downtown high-rise?" "It's handled, Elena." "Don't worry about it," he snapped, finally looking at me. His eyes swept over me like I was a piece of furniture that needed dusting. "And hey, can you call the landscaper? The hedges are looking sloppy." "It's embarrassing." "I called them yesterday, Marcus. They're coming tomorrow." "Well, call them again. Tell them to hurry up." He stood up, chugging the coffee I had spent 10 minutes perfecting, and grabbed his briefcase. "I'll be late tonight." "Client dinner." "Again?" The word slipped out before I could stop it. "Marcus, that's 4 nights this week." He stopped at the door, his hand on the knob. He turned slowly, his expression one of weary patience, like he was explaining calculus to a toddler. "Elena, who pays for this house? Who pays for your car? Who pays for the clothes on your back?" "We're a team, Marcus," I whispered. "I'm the one out there hunting," he said coldly. "You're the one keeping the cave warm. Don't nag me about how long the hunt takes." And then he was gone. The heavy oak door slammed shut, leaving me in the silence of the big, empty house. I spent the day doing what I always did. I volunteered at the local library. I managed the household bills. And I thought about Chloe. Chloe was coming over for dinner that weekend. I needed to prep the menu. I smiled when I thought of her. I had met Chloe when she was a frantic, weeping intern at Marcus's old firm. She was drowning in debt, her mother was sick, and she was about to be fired for a mistake she didn't make. I stepped in. I saw potential in her. I saw a young woman who just needed a break. I convinced Marcus to hire her as his assistant. I paid off her final semester of tuition secretly, telling her it was a company scholarship. When her mother passed away, I held her hand at the funeral. I was the one who told her, "You can be anything you want, Chloe. You're smart. You're beautiful. I truly loved her. She was the family we couldn't have. That evening, Marcus came home later than usual. It was past midnight. I was sitting on the sofa in the living room, reading a book, but mostly just waiting. I wanted to see him. I missed him. He stumbled through the door, loosening his tie. The smell hit me instantly as he walked past, a mix of expensive scotch and something sweeter. Floral. Jasmine? I didn't wear jasmine perfume. You're still up? He muttered, dropping his jacket on the floor. I wanted to make sure you were okay, I said, closing my book. How was the dinner? Long, boring. They signed the deal, though. He flopped down onto the armchair, rubbing his face. God, I'm exhausted. Do you want some water? No. I just want to sleep. He closed his eyes. Within seconds, his breathing deepened. He was out. I sat there watching him. He looked peaceful. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe he really was just working hard for us. Maybe the perfume was from a client, or just the scent of the fancy restaurant air freshener. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. I stood up to get a blanket to drape over him. As I moved, his phone, which was balanced precariously on the armrest of the chair, slid off and hit the carpet with a soft thud. Marcus didn't stir. I bent down to pick it up. I intended to put it on the table. That was all. I respected his privacy. I wasn't a snoop. But as my fingers touched the cold metal of the iPhone, the screen lit up. A notification. It was a text message. And because it was late, and the room was dark, the bright light drew my eyes instantly. Sender, Seabear message, miss you already, Daddy. That hotel room was insane. Next time, let's order the champagne before we tear each other's clothes off. Winking face, love you. My heart stopped. I mean that literally. For a second, my chest was a hollow void. Seabear. That was my nickname for Chloe. I gave her that name because she loved gummy bears. I called her that. Daddy? Tear each other's clothes off? I stared at the screen, my hand trembling so violently I almost dropped the phone again. The world tilted on its axis. The silent living room, the sleeping husband, the smell of jasmine, it all crashed together into a sickening realization. It wasn't a client. It wasn't work. It was Chloe. Chloe, the girl I mentored. Chloe, the girl I comforted at her mother's grave. Chloe, who sat at my dining table and called me sis. I looked at Marcus. He let out a soft snore, his mouth slightly open. He looked so normal. How could a monster look so normal? A wave of nausea rolled over me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him awake and shove the phone in his face. I wanted to drive to Chloe's apartment and demand to know how she could do this to me. But then, something strange happened. The wife part of my brain, the part that ironed shirts and made hollandaise sauce, shut down. And another part of my brain woke up. A part one hadn't used in 20 years. Before I married Marcus, I wasn't just a housewife. I was a forensic accountant. I was the person companies called when the numbers didn't add up. I was the person who found the missing millions. I had given up that career because Marcus said his ego couldn't handle a wife who worked 60 hours a week. He wanted a homemaker. I looked at the phone again. I didn't unlock it, I didn't know his passcode yet, but I didn't need to. The preview was enough. But then, another notification popped up right below the sext. Bank of America, alert. Wire transfer of $50,000 to consulting group Sigma authorized. Balance low. Wait. $50,000? At midnight? To a consulting group I had never heard of? And balance low? We had over $1 million in our joint savings. A $50,000 transfer shouldn't trigger a low balance alert unless there was no money left. My tears dried up instantly. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp dread. This wasn't just an affair. Men have affairs. It's painful, it's cliché, but it's emotional. This was theft. I carefully placed the phone on the table, exactly where he would have put it. I stepped back. I looked at my sleeping husband, and for the first time, I didn't see the man I loved. I saw a target. He thought I was asleep. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was safe. He was wrong. I went upstairs, but I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and I made a vow. I wouldn't just divorce him. I wouldn't just take half. I was going to find out where every single penny went. And I was going to make sure that when he fell, he hit every branch on the way down. The next morning, I was an Academy Award-winning actress. I made the coffee. I made the eggs. I kissed Marcus on the cheek when he woke up, fighting the urge to vomit when I smelled the stale alcohol and deception on his skin. "Did you sleep well?" I asked, my voice light and airy. "Like a log," he said, stretching. He checked his phone immediately. I watched his eyes flick to the screen. He saw the text from Chloe. He smiled, a tiny, reflexive twitch of the lips, then quickly deleted it. He didn't notice the bank alert, or if he did, he didn't care. "I'm off early today," he announced. "Big meetings." "Okay, honey. Love you." "Love you too." He lied so easily. It was effortless for him, like breathing. As soon as his Porsche pulled out of the driveway, the timer started. I knew his schedule. Or rather, I knew the schedule he claimed to have. If he was with Chloe, he would be gone for hours. I locked the front door. Then I went to the basement. Marcus's home office was down there. It was his man cave, a room filled with mahogany bookshelves, leather furniture, and a humidor for his Cuban cigars. He always kept the door locked. Client confidentiality, he claimed. I stood before the heavy door. I didn't have a key. But I knew Marcus. He was arrogant, but he was also lazy. I checked the top of the door frame. Nothing. I checked under the rug. Nothing. I checked the fake potted plant in the hallway. I dug my fingers into the dry soil. There, wrapped in a small plastic baggie, was a silver key. "Predictable," I whispered. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room smelled of stale smoke and old leather. I went straight to his desk. It was a mess of papers, blueprints, and architectural drawings. But I wasn't interested in the real estate projects. I was interested in the money. I turned on his computer. Password protected, of course. I tried his birthday. Incorrect. I tried our anniversary. Incorrect. I paused. My gut churned. I typed in 0-8-1-2. Chloe's birthday. Access granted. The screen flickered to life. I felt a fresh wave of humiliation, but I shoved it down. I didn't have time for feelings. I was a forensic accountant now. I was on a job. I navigated to his email. He had left it logged in. Careless. So incredibly careless. I started searching. I searched for Sigma, the name from the bank alert. Dozens of emails popped up. Subject: Invoice for services Sigma Consulting. Subject: Wire transfer confirmation Sigma. Subject: Offshore setup Cayman. I opened the attachments. My eyes scanned the documents faster than they had in 20 years, but the skill was still there. It's like riding a bike, except the bike is evidence of your husband looting your life savings. Sigma Consulting wasn't a real company. It was a shell. And the address listed on the invoice? It was a P.O. box in a strip mall in Nevada. I traced the wire transfers. $50,000 here. $20,000 there. $100,000 last month. Then I found the big one. A document titled Asset Reallocation Strategy. I opened it. It was an email thread between Marcus and a lawyer named S. Vance. Stan. The slimeball from the dinner party. Stan, we need to move the debt before the filing. If you transfer the toxic assets to the joint holding company now, she'll be liable for the loans when the balloon payments hit next year. Marcus, do it. She won't read the papers. She signs whatever I put in front of her. Just tell her it's a tax restructure. Stan, what about the Cayman accounts? Are they clean? Marcus, clean as a whistle. Chloe is listed as the beneficiary of the trust, but my name isn't on it anywhere. Once I dump Elena and the debt, we're in the clear. I sat back in his leather chair, the air leaving my lungs. It wasn't just theft. It was a setup. Marcus wasn't just planning to leave me broke. He was planning to leave me buried in debt. Toxic assets. Balloon payments. He was shifting bad loans he likely took out to fund his gambling or his lifestyle with Chloe, into a company under my name. When the loans defaulted, the bank wouldn't come for him. They would come for me. He would walk away with the cash in the Cayman Islands, and I would be facing bankruptcy, maybe even fraud charges if the banks thought I was complicit. I felt cold. Bone-deep cold. This man had eaten my breakfast this morning. He had slept in my bed. And he was actively plotting my destruction. I looked around the room. I needed hard copies. Digital evidence was good, but paper was better. I saw the wall safe behind a painting of a sailboat. It was a cliché, again, but Marcus lived his life like a bad movie. I walked over to the safe. This time, I knew exactly what code to try. 0-8-1-2, beep. 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 Click. The heavy door swung open. Inside, there were stacks of cash. Passports. And a small, black ledger. I grabbed the ledger. I opened it. It was handwritten. Marcus didn't trust computers with everything. This was his bribe book. Names of city inspectors. Building permit officials. Amounts paid. Dates. Oh, Marcus, I whispered, a terrifying thrill running through me. You didn't just cheat on your wife. You cheated the city. You cheated the IRS. You cheated everyone. I took out my phone. I didn't steal the ledger, he would notice it was gone. Instead, I spent the next hour taking high-resolution photos of every single page. I photographed the passports, he had a second one, I noticed. I photographed the cash. Then I went back to the computer. I forwarded every incriminating email to a new, encrypted email address I created on the spot. I downloaded the bank statements. I downloaded the shell company and corporation papers. I was shaking, but not from fear anymore. I was shaking with adrenaline. I heard the rumble of a car engine in the driveway. My heart hammered against my ribs. He was back. Why was he back so early? It had only been 3 hours. I quickly closed the safe. I hung the painting back up. I wiped the keyboard with my sleeve to remove fingerprints. I locked the office door and slid the key back into the dirt of the potted plant. I ran up the basement stairs, my breath coming in short gasps. I made it to the kitchen just as the front door opened. Elena? Marcus called out. I forgot my golf clubs. Stan wants to hit a few balls. I was standing by the sink, gripping a sponge so hard my knuckles were white. I turned around, forcing a smile onto my face. Oh. You startled me, I said. They're in the garage, honey. He walked into the kitchen. He looked at me. He looked at my flushed face. You okay? You look sweaty, he observed, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge. Just scrubbed the oven, I lied. Deep cleaning day. He chuckled. You and your cleaning. Have fun with that. He walked out to the garage, whistling. I watched him go. I waited until his car disappeared down the street. Then, I sank to the floor, leaning my back against the cabinets. I had the evidence. I knew the plan. But I wasn't a lawyer. I needed help. I needed someone who hated Marcus as much as I did. Or at least, someone who loved justice. I knew exactly who to call. The next day, I drove into the city. I told Marcus I was going to the art museum. Instead, I went to a dusty, brick building in the South Loop that smelled of old paper and coffee. The sign on the door said, James Thorne, attorney at law. James was my father's best friend. He was the man who taught me how to fish when I was 7. He was the man who sat with me in the hospital waiting room when my dad had his heart attack. He was 75 now, semi-retired, a dinosaur in the legal world according to Marcus. Marcus hired flashy lawyers with expensive suits and loose morals. James wore cardigans and believed in the law as a sacred thing. I hadn't seen him in 5 years. Marcus had slowly isolated me from everyone in my past, claiming James was depressing and stuck in the past. I knocked. Come in, a gravelly voice yelled. I walked in. James was sitting behind a desk buried under mountains of files. He looked up, squinting through thick glasses. Then, his face softened. Ellie, he asked, using my childhood nickname. Hi, James, I said, clutching my heavy handbag. I need help. 10 minutes later, I had dumped everything on his desk. The printed emails. The photos of the ledger. The bank alerts. James sat in silence, reading. He didn't speak for a long time. The only sound was the ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner and the rustle of paper. His brow furrowed deeper and deeper with every page. Finally, he took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. This son of a bitch, James muttered. He looked at me. Pardon my French, Ellie. But this is diabolical. Is it as bad as I think? I asked, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. It's worse, James said, leaning forward. He tapped a document with his finger. See this? This Sigma Consulting? It's a classic washing machine. He takes money from the business, money that belongs to shareholders, and technically to you as a spouse, and sends it there for services. Then Sigma sends it to the Cayman Trust. I figured that part out, I said. But here's the kicker, James continued, pulling out another sheet, the one about the debt transfer. He's not just stealing. He's building a bomb, and he's strapping it to your chest. I felt a chill run down my spine. Explain it to me like I'm 5, James. He's taking out massive loans against the company assets. Risky loans. High interest. He's taking the cash from those loans and hiding it. But the debt? He's preparing a document, a restructuring agreement, that assigns that debt to a subsidiary. A subsidiary that lists you as the sole guarantor. James looked at me with sad, serious eyes. If you sign the papers he gives you, and then he files for divorce, he walks away with millions in cash. You walk away with the company, sure. But the company is hollow. It's just a shell holding $10 million in debt. When the loans default, the bank takes the house, your savings, your car. And because the money disappeared? The feds will look at you for the fraud. He wants to send me to prison, I whispered. The realization hit me harder than the affair. The affair was lust. This was pure malice. Why? Why not just leave me? Because he's greedy, Ellie. He doesn't want to split the assets 50-50. He wants 100% of the money and 0% of the consequences. You're his fall guy. You're the patsy. I sat there, stunned. I thought about the 20 years. The dinners. The vacations. The time I nursed him back to health after his skiing accident. Was it all a lie? Or had he just become this monster over time? What do I do, James? I asked. Do I confront him? Do I call the police? Not yet, James said sharply. The old lawyer was back. His eyes were sharp. If you go to the police now, he has time to shred evidence. He has time to bribe people. He has time to spin the story that you were the mastermind behind his back. He's the CEO. You're the bookkeeper at home. It's his word against yours. So I do nothing? No, James smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. We play his game. But we cheat. He pulled out a legal pad and a pen. First, we need to secure your safety. We're going to open a quiet account he can't touch. But more importantly, we need to let him think he's winning. He needs to believe you are the stupid, oblivious wife he thinks you are. Can you do that? Can you go home and cook him dinner and smile while knowing he's holding a knife to your back? I can, I said. I'll be the best actress in Chicago. Good. Because we need a signature, James said. Not yours. His. On what? We're going to draft a document. It will look like the tax restructure he wants you to sign. The cover page will be identical. But the content? The content will be a confession of judgment and a transfer of the Cayman Trust ownership to you. He'll read it, I argued. He's a control freak. Is he? James asked. Or is he arrogant? Does he read the fine print when he thinks he's dealing with a fool? You said he thinks you're an idiot, Ellie. Use that. James leaned back. And there's one more thing. The IRS. The IRS? If he's cheating on taxes this badly, he's facing federal time. If we bring this to the IRS Criminal Investigation Division before he does, you can get spousal immunity. You become the whistleblower. You hand him over on a silver platter, and you keep your freedom. I took a deep breath. It was risky. It was dangerous. If Marcus found out, I didn't know what he would do. He was powerful. He knew people. But then I remembered the text. Miss you, Daddy. I remembered the blue box he was probably already planning to buy for the anniversary. Let's do it, I said. Let's burn him down. Going home that night was the hardest thing I've ever done. I walked into the kitchen, my heart pounding like a trapped bird. Marcus was already there, pouring himself a drink. Where have you been? He asked, suspicious. The museum, I said, keeping my voice light. And then I got lost coming back. You know me and directions. I let out a ditzy little laugh. I ended up near the old Navy pier. You've lived here for 20 years, Elena. How do you get lost? He shook his head, looking at me with pure disdain. God, you're getting senile. Maybe I am, I sighed, putting my bag down. My head has been so cloudy lately. Maybe it's menopause. I saw his shoulders relax. He bought it. Of course he bought it. It fit his narrative. Elena is old. Elena is useless. Elena is losing her mind. For the next few weeks, I leaned into the role. I burned the toast on purpose. I forgot to pay the water bill, so he got a late notice. I asked him to repeat simple instructions. Every mistake I made, Marcus grew more confident. And more cruel. He started gaslighting me aggressively. He would move my keys and tell me I lost them. He would deny saying things he definitely said. I told you to pick up the dry cleaning, Elena. Are you deaf? He shouted one evening. I don't remember you saying that, I stammered, making my lip tremble. You never remember anything anymore. It's like living with a child. He was breaking me down, or so he thought. He wanted me weak and confused so that when he shoved papers in front of me, I would sign them just to make the yelling stop. The test came 2 weeks later. We were having a small dinner party with his parents. His mother, a woman who always hated me, was there. Marcus and Chloe, who was invited to take notes, were sitting across from me. Marcus brought out a stack of documents after dessert. "Mom, Dad, excuse us for a moment," Marcus said charmingly. "Elena just needs to sign some tax forms for the business. Boring stuff, but we have a deadline." He placed the stack in front of me. It was thick. "Just sign the tabs, babe," he said, handing me a pen. "It's just standard renewal stuff for the LLCs." I looked at the papers. I recognized the header. This was it. The debt transfer. The bomb James had warned me about. If I signed this, I was accepting $10 million in bad debt. My hand hovered over the paper. Everyone was watching. "Go on, Elena," his mother snapped. "Don't hold up the evening. You know you don't understand business anyway." I should probably read it," I said softly. Marcus laughed. A cold, hard sound. "Read it? Elena, it's legalese. You wouldn't understand a word of it. Do you even know what an amortization schedule is?" He looked at Chloe. They shared a smirk. "Just sign it, Elena. Trust me. I'm the one making the money here." The pressure was suffocating. I felt the pen digging into my skin. I needed to stall. I couldn't sign this. But if I refused, he would know I was on to him. I looked at my coffee cup. It was full. Piping hot. I made a decision. "Okay," I said, my hand shaking fake nervously. "Okay, I trust you, Marcus." I moved the pen toward the paper. Then, I jerked my elbow. Smash. My arm hit the coffee cup. Brown, hot liquid exploded across the table. It soaked the tablecloth. It soaked Marcus's shirt. And most importantly, it soaked the documents. "Oh my God!" I shrieked, jumping up. "I'm so sorry. I'm so clumsy." "You idiot!" Marcus roared, jumping up as the hot coffee burned his chest. "Look what you did. You stupid, clumsy cow." His mother gasped. Chloe looked horrified. The documents were ruined. The ink was running. They were a soggy mess. I'm sorry," I cried, grabbing napkins and making it worse. "Get away from it." Marcus pushed my hands away. He grabbed the sodden papers. "These are ruined. I have to get the lawyers to draft them again. It's going to take days." "I didn't mean to." "Just go," Marcus hissed, his face red with rage. "Just go upstairs. I can't even look at you right now." I ran out of the room, sobbing. But as soon as I closed the bedroom door, the sobbing stopped. I walked to the mirror and wiped my eyes. I had bought myself 3 days. Maybe 4. That was enough time for phase 2. The coffee spill was a temporary defense. Now, I needed to go on the offense. I needed Marcus to sign my papers. The ones James had drafted. The ones that swapped the trap. But how? Marcus never signed anything without reading it. He was a shark. Unless he thought it was his idea. Unless he thought he was stealing even more money. I initiated Operation Honey. 2 days after the coffee incident, I made his favorite dinner. Steak au poivre. I opened a bottle of expensive wine. I dressed up, not in my usual frumpy house clothes, but in a dress I hadn't worn in years. Marcus came home grumpy, still mad about the paperwork delay. But the smell of the steak softened him. "What's this?" he asked, eyeing the table. "An apology," I said submissively. "For the coffee. For being so forgetful lately. I know I'm a burden, Marcus." He sat down, cutting into the steak. "Well, at least you recognize it." I poured him wine. I let him drink half the bottle. I waited until his eyes were a little glossy. "You know," I said innocently, twirling my fork. I was watching the news today. They were talking about the crypto market. And offshore investments. Marcus snorted. Don't hurt your brain, Elena. No, I know I don't get it, I said. But, it got me thinking. You work so hard. And the government takes so much in taxes. It's not fair. Marcus looked at me, intrigued. This was music to his ears. Exactly. It's theft. I was thinking, maybe we should protect more of it, I whispered. I have that inheritance from my dad. The bonds. It's about $500,000 now, right? Marcus's ears perked up. He had been trying to get me to liquidate those bonds for years, but my father had locked them in a trust that required my signature to move. Yeah. What about them? Well, I hesitated. I don't want to mess it up. But if you have, a special place to put money where nobody can see it, maybe I should sign them over to you? To the company? So you can keep it safe? Marcus stopped chewing. He stared at me. He saw dollar signs. He saw a stupid wife handing him $500,000 of fresh capital to steal. That's actually a very smart idea, Elena, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I do have a way. A special structure. It yields huge returns. Tax-free. Really? I widened my eyes. Yes. But we'd have to move fast. If we combine your bonds with the company assets, we could double it in a month. Okay, I said. But you have to promise to handle the paperwork. I don't want to read all that boring legal stuff. Just make it simple for me. I will, he promised, practically drooling. I'll have Stan draw it up tomorrow. No, I said. I don't like Stan. He stares at my chest. Marcus laughed. Okay. No Stan. I'll do it myself. I'll use a standard transfer template. Actually, I said, standing up and walking to the sideboard. I found this in Dad's old files. It's what did he call it? A consolidated asset grant? He said it was the best way to move money between spouses without taxes. I pulled out the document James had forged. It looked exactly like a boring, standard transfer form. The top page was titled Spousal Asset Consolidation, Series A. But underneath, in the definitions section, James had redefined transferee and transferor. And buried on page 4 was a clause that triggered a complete transfer of the Cayman Holdings Trust to the spousa, me, in exchange for the bonds. It was a bait and switch. He gets the $500,000 bonds, which I was willing to sacrifice. I get the Cayman account, which held $5 million of stolen money. Marcus took the papers. He was drunk. He was greedy. And he was arrogant. He glanced at the title. He glanced at the $500,000 figure I had highlighted. This looks standard, he mumbled, skimming. Blah blah blah, transfer of assets, blah blah, irrevocable. Is it okay? I asked nervously. If it's too complicated, we can just leave the money in the bank. No, he said quickly. No, this is fine. It's perfect. He pulled out his pen. My heart stopped. He hovered over the signature line. Then he paused. Wait. Why does it say reciprocal grant here? I froze. Think, Elena. Think. Oh, I said. I think that just means I give you the bonds, and you give me, a promise to take care of me? Like a receipt? Marcus laughed. A receipt. Sure, Elena. A receipt. He shook his head at my stupidity. He signed his name. With a flourish. Marcus Sterling. There, he said. Done. You just made the best decision of your life, babe. I took the papers. I held them to my chest. I think I did, Marcus, I said. I really think I did. I had his signature. I had the keys to the kingdom. But I wasn't done. Taking his money was good. But I needed to make sure he couldn't hurt me when he found out. The next morning, while Marcus was at the gym, I took the signed document to James. We filed it immediately with the county clerk and faxed a copy to the bank in the Cayman Islands. James had connections. Then, James handed me a phone number. "This is Agent Miller," James said. "IRS criminal investigation. He's waiting for your call." I looked at the number. This was the point of no return. Once I made this call, Marcus was going to prison. There was no going back. I thought about Chloe. I thought about the toxic assets he tried to dump on me. I dialed the number. "Agent Miller," a voice answered. "My name is Elena Sterling," I said, my voice steady. "And I would like to report a crime. A very big crime." That was 4 months ago. For the last 4 months, I have been wearing a wire. I have recorded Marcus bragging about bribing inspectors. I have recorded him explaining to Chloe how they were going to screw Elena in the divorce. I have recorded him laughing about the substandard concrete he used in the new apartment complex, concrete that could crack in a minor earthquake. I gathered it all. Every tape. Every document. Every photo. And I waited. I waited for the anniversary. I waited for his big moment. Which brings us back to the restaurant. Back to the gilded cage. Back to the frozen look on his face as I handed him the folder. "Open it, Marcus," I repeated. He opened the folder. His eyes scanned the first page. It wasn't the divorce papers. It was a copy of the federal indictment. Sealed. But signed. "What is this?" he whispered, the color draining from his face. "RICO charges? Wire fraud?" "Keep reading," I said. He turned the page. He saw the transcript of his conversation with Chloe from last week. The one where he said, "Once the divorce is final, I'm buying a yacht with the Cayman money." He looked up at me. His hands were shaking now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated terror. "You." He choked out. "You recorded me?" "Every word," I said. "For 4 months." Chloe leaned over, trying to see. "Marcus, what is it? What's going on?" Marcus ignored her. He looked around the room, paranoid. You can't prove this. This is illegal. You can't tape me in my own home." "Actually, Illinois is a 2-party consent state," I said, sounding like a lawyer. "But you know where we talked about most of this? In your office. In the car. And guess who owns the car, Marcus? The company. And guess who owns the company now?" I pointed to the document he had signed when he was drunk on greed and steak. "I do." "No," he gasped. "No, that was for the bonds." "Read the fine print, honey," I smiled. Marcus stood up, knocking his chair over. The entire restaurant was watching now. The silence was deafening. "You bitch," he screamed. "I'll kill you. I'll sue you into the ground." He lunged at me. But he never reached me. I looked him dead in the eye and delivered the line I had been rehearsing in the mirror for 6 months. "The police are waiting outside, Marcus." And right on cue, the double doors of the restaurant burst open. The moment those double doors burst open, the atmosphere in the gilded cage shifted from expensive pretension to absolute chaos. It wasn't just a polite police knock. It was a raid. Federal agents. "Nobody move. Hands where we can see them." The shout came from a man in a windbreaker emblazoned with the yellow letters FBI, flanked by uniformed officers and men in suits who I knew were from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. The sound was deafening. It bounced off the crystal chandeliers and the mahogany paneling. Diners at other tables screamed. A waiter dropped a tray of champagne flutes, the crash of breaking glass harmonizing with the shouts of the agents. Marcus, who had just lunged at me, froze mid-step. His face, flushed red with rage moments ago, drained of color instantly, turning a sickly, waxen gray. It was the face of a man waking up from a dream to realize the nightmare is real. 2 agents were on him in seconds. Marcus Sterling, one agent barked. I. Marcus stammered. The arrogant CEO, the man who had belittled me for 20 years, couldn't form a sentence. You are under arrest for wire fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit money laundering, the agent recited, spinning Marcus around. They slammed him against the table, the same table where he had just mockingly toasted to his new queen. His cheek was pressed against the white tablecloth, right next to the spilled wine that looked disturbingly like blood. This is a mistake. Marcus shrieked, his voice cracking. My wife. She's crazy. She set me up. Talk to my lawyer. We have spoken to your lawyer, Mr. Sterling, the agent said, tightening the zip ties around Marcus's wrists. Mr. Stanley Vance is currently being detained in the parking lot. I looked over at Stan, the slippery lawyer who had been laughing at me 5 minutes ago. He was trying to slide under the table, clawing at the tablecloth like a frightened rat. An officer hauled him up by the back of his expensive suit jacket. Stan was weeping. Actually weeping. But the person I was watching most closely wasn't Marcus. It was Chloe. Chloe was sitting frozen in her chair, her hand still clutching her wine glass so hard I thought it would shatter. Her eyes were wide, darting between Marcus being manhandled and the agents swarming the room. She looked like a child who had gotten caught playing with matches while the house burned down. An agent approached her. Chloe Miller? She jumped. I didn't do anything. I'm just the assistant. I don't know anything. I stood up slowly. The adrenaline was still coursing through my veins, making my fingertips tingle, but I felt a strange, icy calm. I walked around the table, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor, until I was standing right next to her. Tell them, Chloe, I said softly. Tell them you didn't know about the offshore accounts. Tell them you didn't know about the shell companies. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. Elena, please. You know me. I'm family. I'm your sea bear. Don't, I said, the word cutting through the air like a whip. Do not use that name. I was just doing what he told me, she sobbed, pointing a trembling finger at Marcus, who was currently being read his Miranda rights. He made me do it. He said we would be rich. He said we would be rich, I corrected her. But you got greedy, didn't you, Chloe? You couldn't just wait for the divorce. You had to push. I leaned in closer, so only she could hear me over the commotion. Do you remember last month? When I told you I had those headaches? When I left my medical file on the kitchen counter by accident? Chloe stopped crying for a second. Her eyes widened. I saw you reading it, Chloe. I saw you take photos of the fake diagnosis I forged. Terminal, it said. 6 months to live, it said. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I knew you were reading my mail, I whispered. I knew you were waiting for me to die so you could inherit the jewelry and the house without a fight. That's why you told Marcus to rush the debt transfer. That's why you told him to move the money now. You thought I'd be dead before the audit hit. You lied, she whispered, horrified. I learned from the best, I smiled. I'm not dying, Chloe. I've never been healthier. But you? You're going to rot in a cell. The agent pulled Chloe up. Ms. Miller, you're named in the indictment as a co-conspirator. You have the right to remain silent. No. No. Chloe screamed, thrashing as they cuffed her. Elena. Help me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I watched them drag her away. The girl I had treated like a daughter. The girl who had slept in my guest room. The girl who called my husband daddy. I felt nothing. No pity. No sadness. Just the satisfaction of a ledger finally being balanced. As they hauled Marcus past me, he locked eyes with me one last time. He looked pathetic. His hair was messed up, his suit was rumpled, and the arrogance was completely extinguished. "Elena," he rasped. "Why?" I looked at him. I thought about the lonely nights. I thought about the gift of divorce papers. I thought about the 20 years of my life I had poured into his hollow ambition. "Because, Marcus," I said, loud enough for the mesmerized crowd to hear, "I was the one keeping the cave warm. And you forgot that the fire can burn you just as easily as it comforts you." The doors closed behind them. The sirens wailed outside, a cacophony of red and blue lights flashing against the restaurant windows. James stepped out from the crowd near the bar. He had been there the whole time, watching, witnessing. He walked over to me, a grim smile on his face. "You okay, Ellie?" he asked, handing me a handkerchief. I looked down at my hands. They were steady. "I'm fine, James," I said. "I'm actually starving. Do you think the kitchen is still open?" The police had cleared out the main perpetrators, but the restaurant was still buzzing with the aftermath. The manager was frantically trying to calm the other diners, offering free champagne as if bubbles could erase the sight of a SWAT team takedown. But there was one person left at our table. One person who hadn't been arrested, but looked like she wished the floor would open up and swallow her whole. Patricia. Marcus's mother. She was sitting in her chair, clutching her pearl necklace, her face a mask of shock and indignation. Throughout the arrest, she had been screaming at the officers, "Do you know who we are?" and "Get your hands off my son." But they had ignored her with the practiced indifference of professionals. Now, it was just her and me. I sat back down across from her. I picked up my menu. "I think I'll have the lobster bisque," I said to the empty air. "Have you lost your mind?" Patricia hissed. Her voice was trembling with rage. "You just sent your husband, my son, to prison. In front of everyone. In front of the gilded cage crowd." "He sent himself to prison, Patricia," I replied calmly. "I just called the Uber." "You vindictive little..." She sputtered, searching for a word nasty enough. "He was right about you. You're poison. You ruined him. He was a successful businessman." "He was a crook, Patricia," I said, putting the menu down and looking her in the eye. "And you knew it. Don't pretend you didn't. Who do you think paid for that condo in Florida? Who do you think paid for your Lexus? It was stolen money. It was my money. It was Marcus's money," she shrieked. People were looking again, but Patricia didn't care. "He earned it. He worked himself to the bone while you sat at home playing housewife." "I sat at home covering his tracks," I corrected her. "I sat at home raising the social standing of this family so people would trust him with their investments. And while I was doing that, you were telling him I wasn't good enough. You were encouraging him to find someone younger, weren't you?" Patricia went pale. "I never." "I heard the tapes, Patricia," I lied. "Well, only partially. I had heard Marcus telling Chloe that his mother couldn't wait to see the back of Elena. I know what you said about me. Frumpy. Boring. Barren. That was your favorite insult, wasn't it? Because we never gave you grandchildren." Patricia flinched. That was a low blow, but tonight, I wasn't fighting fair. I was fighting for survival. "Well, here's the news, Patricia," I leaned forward. "The feds are going to seize everything. The house. The cars. The accounts. And that includes the gifts he gave you." "They can't touch my condo," she gasped. "It's in my name. Bought with proceeds from wire fraud," I said, channeling everything James had taught me. "It's called Fruit of the Poisonous Tree. They'll take the condo. They'll take the car. You'll be lucky if they don't charge you with receiving stolen property. She stared at me, her mouth agape. The reality of her situation was crashing down. She wasn't just the mother of a disgraced CEO, she was about to be destitute. You wouldn't let them, she stammered, her tone shifting from aggression to a pathetic sort of begging. Elena, I'm an old woman. Where will I go? I looked at her. For 20 years, this woman had made me feel small. She had criticized my cooking, my clothes, my laugh. She had sided with Marcus every single time he belittled me. She had known about Chloe and said nothing. I don't know, Patricia, I said, standing up and smoothing my dress. But I hear the retirement home in Elmwood has vacancies. Of course, it's state-funded, so no private rooms. But you'll adjust. Life is about evolution, right? That's what Marcus said. I picked up my purse. James was waiting for me by the door. Elena, she cried out as I walked away. Elena, you can't leave me here. How will I get home? Call an Uber, I said over my shoulder. Oh, wait. Marcus has your credit card linked to the company account, doesn't he? That's probably frozen by now. I didn't look back. I walked out of that restaurant, the cold Chicago air hitting my face. It felt cleaner than the air inside. It felt like freedom. Outside, the paparazzi were already gathering. Someone had tipped them off, probably a busboy looking for a quick payout, or maybe even James. Flashes popped like lightning as I walked down the steps. Mrs. Sterling. Mrs. Sterling. Is it true your husband embezzled $50 million? Did you know about the affair? Are you standing by him? I stopped at the bottom of the stairs. A microphone was shoved in my face. I looked directly into the camera lens. My name, I said, my voice clear and strong, is Elena. Just Elena. And I have no comment other than this, the truth always balances the ledger. Eventually. James pulled up in his beat-up sedan. I slid into the passenger seat. That was quite an exit, James chuckled as we pulled away, leaving the chaos behind. It was necessary, I said, leaning my head back against the seat and closing my eyes. Is it over, James? The legal fight? No, that's just starting, James said gently. But the part where you're a victim? Yeah. That part is over. We drove in silence for a while. The city lights blurred past. Where to? James asked. Home, I said. I have to pack. You sure you want to go back there tonight? I have to, I said. I need to say goodbye to the ghost. The house looked different when I got back. It was the same structure, brick, imposing, manicured hedges, but the soul of the place was gone. Or maybe I was finally seeing it for what it was, a stage set for a play that had been cancelled. The police had already been there. I could tell. The front door was unlocked, the tape from the search warrant still flapping in the wind on the doorframe. Inside, it was a wreck. They had turned the place upside down. Drawers were pulled out, contents dumped on the floor. The safe in the basement was wide open, empty. Marcus's humidor was overturned, expensive cigars crushed into the carpet by heavy boots. It should have been violating. Most people would feel violated seeing their home ransacked. But I felt relieved. They had stripped the house of its secrets. There were no more hidden phones, no more hidden ledgers, no more lies tucked away in velvet boxes. It was just a messy house. I walked into the kitchen. The coffee stain from the accident with the documents was still on the rug. I stepped over it. I went upstairs to the master bedroom. The bed was unmade. Marcus had left in a hurry this morning, excited for his big anniversary surprise. His pajamas were still on the floor. I kicked them aside. I grabbed a suitcase from the closet. I didn't pack much. I didn't want the clothes he had bought me, the trophy wife dresses, the uncomfortable heels. I packed my jeans, my old sweaters, the books I loved that he called boring. I went to the jewelry box. This was the moment of truth. Inside lay the diamond earrings, the tennis bracelet, the sapphire necklace. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in gems. I looked at them. They sparkled in the dim light. Legally, they were gifts. They were mine. I could sell them. I could live off them for years. But every facet trapped a memory of a lie. The earrings? An apology for a business trip that ran late, probably with Chloe. The necklace? A birthday gift given 3 days late because he forgot. I closed the box. I wasn't taking them. Let the feds have them. Let them auction them off to pay back the investors he cheated. I didn't want his blood diamonds. I walked into the guest room, Chloe's room. It still smelled like her perfume. Cheap vanilla and ambition. I opened the closet. She had left some clothes here. A red scarf. A pair of running shoes. And there, tucked on the top shelf, was a photo album. I pulled it down. It was an old album, one from 5 years ago. I opened it. It was photos of us. Me and Chloe. A trip to the beach we took before she started working for Marcus. In the photo, I was laughing, pointing at a seagull. Chloe was looking at me with what looked like adoration. Why? I whispered to the empty room. I loved you. That was the only time I cried that night. I didn't cry for Marcus. I cried for the girl I thought I knew. I cried for the betrayal of friendship, which cuts deeper than the betrayal of marriage. A husband can fall out of love. But a friend? A friend is supposed to be the one who helps you bury the body, not the one who hands you the shovel to dig your own grave. I ripped the photo in half. Then in quarters. I let the pieces fall onto the carpet. I picked up my suitcase and walked downstairs. I stopped in the hallway. There was a mirror there, a grand, gilt-framed antique. I looked at myself. The woman staring back wasn't the timid housewife from 6 months ago. Her makeup was smudged, her hair was windblown, and she looked exhausted. But her eyes were clear. There was no fear in them. You did it, I whispered to my reflection. You survived. I walked out the front door and left it unlocked. I didn't care anymore. I got into my own car, a sensible sedan that was in my name, paid for with my inheritance money years ago, the only asset I had kept truly separate. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw a tow truck pulling up. They were coming for Marcus's Porsche. I honked and waved at the driver as I passed. He looked confused, but I just laughed. I drove to a small motel on the outskirts of town. It wasn't the Gilded Cage. The sheets were scratchy, and the air conditioner rattled. But that night, for the first time in 20 years, I slept without waking up at 5 a.m. I slept the sleep of the innocent. The next morning, the world exploded. I woke up to 147 missed calls. Reporters. Friends I hadn't heard from in years. Marcus's distant relatives. I turned the phone off. I turned on the TV in the motel room. Every local channel was covering it. Sterling scandal, real estate mogul arrested in FBI raid. They had footage of Marcus being led out of the restaurant in cuffs, his head hung low. They had footage of Chloe crying as she was shoved into a squad car. And then, they had the footage of me. Might the police are waiting outside, Marcus' line hadn't been caught on camera, but my statement on the stairs had. The truth always balances the ledger. The news anchors were calling me the Iron Wife. Social media was going wild. Hashtag Team Elena was trending on Twitter. People were dissecting Marcus's finances, his affairs, his arrogance. But amidst the media circus, I had work to do. I met James at a diner for breakfast. He looked tired but triumphant. So, James said, dipping toast into his eggs. The district attorney wants to talk to you. They want to formalize the immunity deal. I'm ready, I said. They also told me something else. James lowered his voice. Marcus is talking. My stomach tightened. What is he saying? He's blaming you. Of course. He's saying you were the financial mastermind. He says he was just the face of the company, and you cooked the books from home. I laughed. It was a bitter sound. Does he have proof? No. But he's desperate. And Chloe? She's singing a different tune. She's saying Marcus coerced her. She's claiming sexual harassment now, trying to paint herself as a victim to get a lighter sentence. They're eating each other, I said. Sharks in a tank with no food. Exactly. But the feds need you to nail the coffin shut. They need you to testify about the intent. They need you to decode the bribe book you photographed. I'll do it, I said. But I want one thing in return. What? I want to see him. One last time. James frowned. Ellie, I don't advise that. He's dangerous. He's volatile. He's in a cage, James. He can't hurt me. I need closure. I need to see him without the suit. Without the power. I need to see the man I wasted half my life on. James sighed. I'll make the call. 2 days later, I was walking through the sterile, echoing corridors of the Metropolitan Correctional Center. The smell of bleach and despair was overwhelming. I sat in a small room with a glass partition. The metal stool was cold. The door on the other side opened. Marcus walked in. He looked 10 years older. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. His hair was unwashed, hanging limp over his forehead. He hadn't shaved, and the gray stubble made him look haggard. He sat down. He didn't look at me at first. He stared at the counter. Hello, Marcus, I said. He looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. You look happy, he spat. His voice was raspy. I'm not happy, I said. I'm just relieved. You ruined everything, he hissed, leaning toward the glass. We had it all, Elena. We were royalty in this city. You threw it all away because you got jealous of a 20-year-old girl? I didn't throw it away because of Chloe, I said calmly. I threw it away because you were stealing from me. You were going to frame me, Marcus. You were going to let me rot in prison for your crimes. I would have taken care of you, he lied. I would have sent money. Stop it, I said. Just stop lying. For once in your life. The game is over. There is no audience here. It's just us. He slumped back in his chair. The fight drained out of him. What do you want? He asked. I brought you something, I said. I slid a piece of paper through the slot at the bottom of the glass. It was the divorce decree. The final one. My lawyers filed it this morning, I said. Citing adultery, fraud, and cruel treatment. Since you used company funds for the affair, and the company is now seized, you have no assets to fight me with. I get to keep my inheritance. I get to keep my name. He looked at the paper. And, I added. I brought you this. I held up a photo against the glass. It was a picture of the two of us, from 20 years ago. Our wedding day. We looked so young. So hopeful. Remember him? I asked. Remember the man who promised to love and cherish me? The man who said he wanted to build a life together? Marcus looked at the photo. His lip quivered. He's dead, I said softly. You killed him, Marcus. Long before the feds showed up. You killed him with every lie, every dollar you stole, every time you looked at me and saw a mark instead of a wife. I tore the photo in half. Elena. He whispered. A tear rolled down his cheek. It might have been real. It might have been acting. I didn't care anymore. Goodbye, Marcus, I said. I stood up. Wait, he shouted, slapping his hand against the glass. Elena. Don't leave me here. I can't do this. I'm not built for this. You should have thought of that when you were mixing the concrete, I said. I turned and walked out. I could hear him screaming my name, but the heavy steel door slammed shut, cutting off the sound. Silence. Beautiful silence. The trial lasted 3 weeks. It was the spectacle of the year. I testified on day 4. I wore a simple blue suit, the color of truth. I sat on the stand and walked the jury through the complex web of shell companies. I explained the Sigma consulting invoices. I explained the bribe book. Marcus's defense attorney tried to rattle me. He tried to paint me as the scorned wife out for revenge. Isn't it true, Mrs. Sterling, that you were angry about your husband's relationship with Ms. Miller? He asked aggressively. Yes, I said. I was angry. But anger didn't make him forge signatures. Anger didn't make him wire $3 million to the Cayman Islands. Greed did that. The jury nodded. They liked me. I was the relatable victim who fought back. Then came Chloe's testimony. It was pathetic. She had taken a plea deal, 2 years in exchange for testifying against Marcus. She cried on the stand. She said Marcus manipulated her. She said she was young and stupid. But then, the prosecutor played the tapes. The tapes I had recorded. Chloe's voice filled the courtroom. When is she going to die, Marcus? I'm tired of waiting. We need that inheritance money for the yacht. The gasp in the courtroom was audible. Chloe turned pale. She realized that her innocent victim act had just been blown to pieces. She wasn't a victim. She was a co-conspirator who had wished for my death. Marcus didn't testify. He sat at the defense table, staring at the floor, defeated. The verdict came back in 4 hours. Guilty. On all counts. The sentencing hearing was a month later. I was there. I sat in the front row, next to James. The judge was a stern woman who had no patience for white-collar crime. Mr. Sterling, she said, looking down at Marcus. You lived a life of luxury built on the ruined dreams of your investors and the betrayal of your family. You showed no remorse until you were caught. I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison. 15 years. Marcus closed his eyes. He would be 65 when he got out. His life was effectively over. Chloe got 5 years. The judge wasn't lenient after hearing the tapes. As the bailiffs led Marcus away, he didn't look back. He just shuffled forward, the chains around his ankles clanking. A sound I would never forget. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright sunlight. The reporters were there, but I didn't stop. I put on my sunglasses. It's over, James said, putting a hand on my shoulder. No, I said, taking a deep breath of the city air. It's just beginning. 1 year later. The smell of roasting coffee beans filled the air. It was a warm, rich scent, better than any perfume. I wiped down the counter of the ledger, my cafe. Yes, I named it that. A little inside joke. I had used the money from my inheritance, the money Marcus tried to steal, to open this place. It was small, cozy, located in a quiet neighborhood. I baked the pastries myself. I wasn't rich. The government had seized the mansion, the cars, the jewelry. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment now. It was small, but it was mine. I paid the rent. I bought the furniture. The door chimes jingled. Hey, Elena. It was Stan, no, not Stan the lawyer. Stan the postman. A nice man who liked my blueberry muffins. Morning, Stan, I smiled, handing him his usual. On the house today. You're too good to us, he grinned. I looked around the cafe. It was full. People talking, laughing, reading books. I saw a young woman in the corner, crying over a cup of tea. She was looking at her phone, typing furiously. She looked heartbroken. I recognized that look. The look of a woman whose world has just cracked. I took a fresh croissant and walked over to her table. "Rough day?" I asked softly. She looked up, startled. My boyfriend. I just found out. He's cheating?" I guessed. She nodded, tears spilling over. "And he used my credit card to buy her flowers." I pulled up a chair. "What's your name?" I asked. "Sarah." "Well, Sarah," I said, putting a hand on hers. "My name is Elena. And let me tell you a little story about a blue velvet box and a wiretap. You're going to get through this. But first, we need to check your bank statements." She laughed through her tears. I wasn't just a cafe owner. I had started a support group for women dealing with financial infidelity. We met on Tuesday nights. We helped each other find hidden assets, navigate divorces, and rebuild our self-esteem. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a survivor. And more than that, I was a guide. I looked out the window. The sun was shining. The trees were green. Marcus was in a cell, probably mopping floors for 12 cents an hour. Chloe was in prison, realizing that beauty fades but a criminal record is forever. And me? I was free. Truly, completely free. I walked back behind the counter, tied my apron tighter, and started the espresso machine. The noise was loud, hiss and steam, but to me, it sounded like music. Conclusion: so, that's my story. I didn't just survive my anniversary dinner, I turned it into a revolution. To anyone listening who feels trapped, who feels like they are being underestimated, remember this: the person who holds the pen writes the history. Don't let them hold the pen. Take the ledger back. Balance the books. And never, ever let them see you cry until the handcuffs are on them. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what would you have put in that folder? This is Elena, signing off. Stay sharp, everyone.